something to think about.
Shalom and greetings. We welcome you to this week's Sabbath message. This week's Sabbath message is entitled, Seeking Yawh Elohim's Best for Us. Seeking Yawh Elohim's best for us. So let us direct our attention to the understanding that there is a difference in what Yawh Elohim allows and what is his best for mankind. There is a difference in what Yawh Elohim allows and what is his best for mankind. Now, much attention has been given by many that profess to adhering to Scripture and others of the secular world about what Yawh Elohim has allowed mankind to do. Much attention given to what Yawh Elohim has allowed mankind to do. We will grow and move from just knowing to understanding that Yawh Elohim's allowing is actually a sign and indication. Yawh Elohim allowing is a sign and indication. Sadly, simply knowing what Yawh Elohim allows and not truly understanding has led to many accepted traditions. Simply just knowing what Yawh Elohim allows and not truly understanding has led to many accepted traditions. Now, true understanding of Yawh Elohim allowing is actually, this is the true understanding of Yawh Elohim allowing, is actually intended to give revelation of being out of tune with Yawh Elohim. I'm going to say this again. Truly understanding of Yawh Elohim allowing is actually intended to give revelation of being out of tune with Yawh Elohim. True understanding of Yawh Elohim allowing should expose the traditions that have been established. These celebrated traditions actually corrupt Yawh Elohim's purpose of why he allowed things that were not his best for mankind. Follow me here. Stick with me here. It is imperative that we grow from just knowing to understanding the sign, the signal, the indication we should be in tune with is that we all have sinned, forsook, and rebelled against Yawh Elohim. And because of mankind's sins, forsaking and rebelling, Yawh Elohim has allowed for some things that are not his best for mankind. So let us come to understand. His allowing is in response to mankind having moved away from Yawh Elohim's best for mankind. Let us understand. Let us come to understand. His allowing, Yawh Elohim's allowing, is in response to mankind having moved away from Yawh Elohim's best for mankind. This is actually a dangerous thing, though, because it exposes mankind to perils never intended for us. This is actually a dangerous thing. It exposes mankind to perils never intended for us. Interestingly enough, far less attention is given to what is Yawh Elohim's best for mankind. What we all should be seeking is Yahweh Elohim's best for mankind. We talked about a lot of attention has been given to what he has allowed, but far less attention given to what actually is his best for mankind. What we all should be seeking is Yahweh Elohim's best, not settling for what he allows. There's a definite correlation to operating within Yahweh Elohim's best and the condition of our overall welfare, our families and friends, and our communities and our nation. There's a direct correlation to operating within Yahweh Elohim's best with all of these. Always keeping in mind that Yahweh Elohim's best for us does not change. Like everything else from Yahweh Elohim, it does not change. It is as applicable today as it was in the day he gave it. So, let us turn to the scripture and allow it to transition us from just knowing to truly understanding the importance of seeking Yahweh Elohim's best. In the first book of scripture, Genesis, the very first chapter and verses 29 through 30, it gives us the first example of what is Yahweh Elohim's best. So, it reads, Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. And Elohim said, Behold, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. Get this now, get this now. To you it shall be for meat. Genesis chapter 1, verse 30. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given to them every green herb for meat. And it was so. And it was so. As we always share, when examining scripture, we should always be cognizant. We should always be aware of the who, what, why, when, where, and how of scripture we are reading and are examining. In these passages, the who is Elohim speaking, commanding. For command is one of the definitions in the Strong's Concordance for the word said. So when it talks about, when he said, Elohim said, if you go and look at one of the definitions in the Strong's Concordance, it actually is command. In addition, the who is also who Elohim is speaking or commanding to. That is the created men and women. The what is for the created men and women to behold Elohim's best for mankind, and in addition to all the animals regarding their diet. It is important to note that Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, always gives mankind a cue, a warning to pay attention to and adhere. The word behold is an example of this. In the Hebrew, the definition of the word behold is used for pointing out persons, things, and places, as well as actions, to point them out. Elohim commanded that the created men and women pay attention to what he is pointing out. To behold. So we talked about the who. We talked about the what. The when is right after, directly after the creation of the men and women and all the animals, the beginning, the never before, the never was, the origin. That's the when. So, in the beginning of the creation of men and women and all the animals, all, I'm going to say that again, all were to consume fruits and vegetables as their meat, as their food. But it doesn't stop there. Get this. Genesis 1 verse 31 goes on to tell us the state of the men and women and all the animals at this point in time. This is important. This is significant. So let us read Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. Genesis chapter 1 verse 31 reads, "And Elohiym saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was not just good, it was very good." That's the state of the men and the women and the animals at this point in time. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Now, let us fast forward to after the fall of Adam and mankind. So now this was Elohim's best. We just read it in Genesis 1. But now let's fast forward to after the fall of Adam and mankind, when everything is not very good. So let us go to Genesis chapter 9, verse 3. So we're going to go there and read. So Genesis chapter 9, verse 3 reads, "Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you." Say this again now. We saw what his best was, but this is what he's allowed. He's allowed this. So I'm not saying that you can't do it. This is what he's allowed. He tells them, he's speaking to Noah and his family, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things. Scripture shares what Yahweh Elohim is allowing for mankind to eat. Now remember, we just stated, this is after all of the sin and the wickedness that had taken place after the fall of Adam and mankind. All of this had happened before the flood. Because in Genesis 9, he's speaking to them after the flood. Mankind, who were given dominion over all the animals, because, get this, because of their sin, moved both mankind and the animals. Because of their sin, because of the sin of mankind, moved both mankind and the animals further away from their previous closeness with Yahweh Elohim. Before sin, when they were still innocent. Remember, we stated earlier that him allowing is actually a sign, an indication of the mankind moving away from him. Medical science validates the foods that people eat have a significant influence on their overall health. Medical science validates this, even though we don't need that because Yah already told us. But medical science validates the foods that people eat have a significant influence on their overall health. We should understand that just because Yahweh Elohim allows something does not mean he approves of it. Let me say this again. We should understand that just because Yahweh Elohim allows something does not mean he approves of it. Scripture shares Yahweh Elohim later attempts to bring his peculiar treasure, his own possession, his private property closer to him, and his best for them in the book of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 5. So let us read Exodus chapter 19, verse 5. Exodus 19:5 reads, "Now therefore, if, get that now, we've talked about this in our previous messages, episodes, studies, these Boolean statements, the if then. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and in addition, keep my covenant." There's a prerequisite here, these if then Boolean statements. Then, if you do this, then, after meeting those requirements, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me, above all people, for all the earth is mine. Now, as we stated previously, let us understand the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and how of the scripture being examined. The who are the house of Jacob, the children of Israel. And the what is they have the opportunity. Get this now. So many people just miss that if then Boolean statement, those prerequisites. They have the opportunity to be a peculiar treasure unto Yahweh Elohim, above all people. The when will this happen is if, so this is important to understand the who, the what, the where, the why, the when. The when will this happen? This will happen if, only if the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, listen, to attend, to give heed, to obey Yahweh Elohim's voice and keep his covenant. That's when it'll happen. It doesn't just happen automatically. We just identified that Yahweh Elohim is trying to bring the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, back to him and his best for them. And once again, he gives a cue, a key. Notice, the first word of Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 is now. Now. This word means at the present time or moment. So now that we understand the word now, let us understand the word if. The word if means a condition, requirement, or stipulation. So the key is at this present moment, at this present time, you are not my peculiar treasure. Get this, the key is when he's speaking to them at this present moment, at this present time, you are not my peculiar treasure. But depending on your adhering to the following conditions, requirements, and or stipulations, you can become my peculiar treasure above all people. Scripture reveals the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, never really listened. Let me say this again. Scripture reveals that the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, never really listened, attended, gave heed, or obeyed Yahweh Elohim's voice, nor kept his covenant. The few times they did, Scripture shows their byproduct, which we have addressed in previous messages and episodes, they flourished. The few times they did listen, attend, give heed, and obey, and kept Yah's covenant, their byproduct was they flourished. But get this, Scripture also shows the numerous times they did not, and their byproduct. And they were in captivity, subjected to other nations. Yahweh Elohim allowed for certain things during this period of time. But remember, this does not mean any of the things he allowed were considered his best for his creation. Remember this. Just because he allowed it, he never considered it his best for his creation. He waited patiently for them to do what he had asked them to do, in order that they may become his peculiar treasure above all people. A couple of examples of Yahweh Elohim's patience are them wanting to rule themselves, having a king, and another example, husbands being allowed to divorce their wives. Now, Scripture shares these were not things he approved of, even though they were allowed. Sadly, the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, did not understand the cues Yahweh Elohim gave them and moved further and further away from Yahweh Elohim. In Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 14 through 15, we're going to read, and it'll give us some examples. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 14 reads, "When thou art come into the land which the Lord Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee, and shalt possess it, and shalt dwell therein, and shalt say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are about me." So he's telling them already, so you guys are going to forget all about me being your king and taking you through all of this. But when you see the other nations, you're going to want to be like them. Again, not what is his best. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15. "Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord Yahweh thy Elohim shall choose. One from among thy brethren shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother." So he's allowing this. "Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord Yahweh thy Elohim shall choose." So he's already saying he's allowing this, not his best. Yahweh Elohim warns the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, that they would say they would want a king over them like the other nations. Who cares about those other nations? And Yahweh Elohim will allow this with the condition, requirement, or stipulation. He will choose the one that they can set as king over them. Further clarity is given in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 15 through 45. But for the sake of time, we'll just highlight verses 15 and 36. Despite what might be said by some, the Scripture is a consistent and harmonious document and never contradicts itself. But this is only validated when we move from just knowing to truly understanding Scripture. So let us read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. It reads, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not," get this now, "but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh the Lord thy Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15, it validates what we now understand, that Exodus 19:5 begins with a condition, a requirement, a stipulation that if upheld would bring a benefit. But like most conditions, requirements, and stipulations, there is some type of reprimand or punishment for not adhering, as it is to be expected. Yahweh Elohim gives the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, a cue, a warning that there will be reprimand and curses for not adhering. He gives them a cue, he gives them a warning. Let's read now Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 36. Yahweh, the Lord, shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee. Thy king, which thou shalt set over thee. Remember, he was supposed to set the king over them. The Lord Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 36, it shows that Yahweh Elohim does not approve of their decision to have a king over them that they establish. Scripture also validates scripture in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 22. But again, for the sake of time, we will focus on just a few of these verses. So let us start with 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 4 through 5. It reads, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4. Then all of the elders, now get this, stay with me here. Then all of the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5. And said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Scripture, once again, validating scripture, shares as was prophesied by Yahweh Elohim, all of the elders of Israel approached Samuel and told him to appoint a king to judge them like all the other nations. Now remember, Yahweh Elohim already stated he would allow the house of Jacob, the children of Israel, to have a king over them like the nations, but he would choose the one. Let's now read a snippet here in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 6 through 9. It reads, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 6. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto Yahweh the Lord. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7. And Yahweh the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken. Now this is what Yahweh said unto Samuel. Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So again, we see Yahweh Elohim's best here, and we see mankind moving away from his best. He's telling Samuel, they didn't reject you, they rejected me. And they rejected me reigning and being king over them. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 8. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 9. Now, therefore, hearken unto their voice. Howbeit, though, get this part here, though, the mercy of the Most High. Howbeit, yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. Now Samuel, seeking Yahweh Elohim's best, prays unto Yahweh Elohim about the matter, because it's so disturbing to him Once again, Yahweh Elohim allows, but does not approve, and tells Samuel to hearken unto the voice of them in all they tell him. And Yahweh Elohim shares with Samuel, they have not rejected you, they've rejected me, that I should not reign over them. That's his best. Yahweh Elohim continues sharing with Samuel that all of their works that they have done since the day that he brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, have forsaken him, and they served other gods. The consistency of Yahweh Elohim's love, passion, and long suffering, though, is shown. It's still shown, even with all of that. When he tells Samuel to hearken unto their voices, but protest solemnly. As we stated in the beginning, that mankind is so focused and infatuated with what Yahweh Elohim allows, they miss, or as we are about to see, do not care about the repercussions. They're so enamored with what he allows that they miss, or as we're about to see, they do not even care about the repercussions. So we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 19. It reads, 1 Samuel 8:19. Nevertheless, now remember, he told Samuel to hearken, but to protest solemnly. So after he protests solemnly, this is where we pick up now in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And get what they said. And they said, nay, no, but we will have a king over us. We ain't trying to hear that. We will have a king over us. Scripture reveals that despite the cues, the warnings of Yahweh Elohim through Samuel, notice that it has now moved from not just the elders of Israel to all the people. So get this now. Don't miss this. Don't overlook this. The who, what, why, where, when, how. 1 Samuel 8:19 says, nevertheless, the people. Now remember, we started in 1 Samuel back in verse 8, in chapter 8, where it was just the elders of Israel. But now in 1 Samuel 8:19, it says, nevertheless, the people. So it's escalated. So now we notice that it has moved from not just the elders of Israel to all the people. That they all say, we will have a king over us. And in the very last verse of 1 Samuel, chapter 8, verse 22, it's going to show what Samuel says here. Let us read 1 Samuel 8, verse 22. And Yahweh, the Lord, said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, he's allowing, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. So Yahweh Elohim allows for Samuel to make or appoint them a king. But it's so important that we understand that just because Yahweh Elohim allows something does not mean he approves of it. As we stated earlier, Yahweh Elohim is he's desperately trying to keep his creation from harm's way. Remember, we said it's dangerous to move away from Yahweh Elohim. Not adhering to Yahweh Elohim's best is dangerous. It can expose mankind to hazards never intended for us. The other example of Yahweh Elohim's best for mankind is given in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. It reads, Genesis 2:18, and Yahweh, the Lord Elohim, said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him and help me for him. Yahweh Elohim knows man needs a female helper, a wife. How do we know Yahweh Elohim was referring to a wife? Scripture interprets Scripture in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, just a couple verses after. So let us read Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. This is Adam speaking. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Adam, the man, the formed man, knew what Yahweh Elohim was referring to. Adam, the man, the formed man, says that a man shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Now, the word cleave in the Hebrew means to be glued. So Yahweh Elohim's best for man was for him to be glued unto his wife, for there to be one flesh. Scripture reveals that there were issues with men not being glued to their wives, that they were not one flesh, and that the men were leaving their wives. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 through 4, it shares this. So let us read. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1 reads, when a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanliness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 2. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 3. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 4, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife, after that she is defiled. For that is an abomination before Yahweh the Lord. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin. Thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which Yahweh the Lord thy Elohim giveth thee for an inheritance. So Yahweh Elohim addresses when a man can write his wife a bill of divorcement. Yeah, this Yahweh Elohim allowed, though, but did not condone or approve. But he gave them a when they could do it. It was an allowing, not that he approved it. Yeshua confirms this. Yeshua confirms that this is not what he condoned or approved. In the New Testament / covenant, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19, verses 3 through 9, it reads, let us read it. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19, verse 3 reads, the Pharisees also came unto him, Yeshua, tempting him and saying unto him, is it lawful? Is it lawful? Again, is it allowed? Not is it his best. It's not if it's Yahweh Elohim's best. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? The Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 4. And he answered, Yeshua answered and said unto them, the Pharisees, have ye not read that he which made them, men and women, husband and wife, at the beginning made them male and female? The Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 5. And said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 6. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore Elohim hath joined together, let no man put asunder. Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 7. They said unto him, the Pharisees said unto Yeshua, okay, all right. Well, why? Why then did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and put her away? We're going to deal with you. Why did Moses then command to give a writing of a divorcement and put her away? Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 8. He, Yeshua, saith unto them, Moses, get this now. He gives them an answer. Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 19, verse 9. Yeshua is still speaking. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away, doth commit adultery. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, intending on tripping up Yeshua, make the mistake of using as their topic something that had been allowed by Yahweh Elohim, but not his best. Yeshua is quick to point out what Yahweh Elohim's best was from the very beginning. But as we pointed out from the beginning, mankind is very fixated on what Yahweh Elohim allows versus what is his best for mankind. So, the Pharisees reply that Moses, wait a minute now, Yeshua, wait, Moses commanded that they give a writing of divorcement and put away their wives. Yeshua immediately enlightens them that Yahweh Elohim suffered. He allowed Moses to command such because of the hardness of your hearts. But from the beginning, it was not so. And that anyone doing so with the exception of fornication and marry another is committing adultery. And if anyone marry a woman that has been put away is also committing adultery. We've explained and gained understanding that the ecclesia, the called out ones, are now Yahweh Elohim's peculiar treasure, his royal priesthood. And the ecclesia is given cues, given keys as well to what is Yahweh Elohim's best. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 17 through 19, it shares. So let us read. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17 reads, Think not, this is Yeshua speaking, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 18. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. Whosoever therefore, now get this. Whosoever, therefore, shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so. So they break the commandment and teach others to do it as well. He shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do all these commandments and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Let us go and move from just knowing to understanding the cues, the keys Yeshua gives, are that those seeking Yahweh Elohim's best should understand his laws and the commandments. Yeshua follows this up in scripture in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 15 through 21. Let us read. The Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15 reads, If ye love me, this is Yeshua speaking to his disciples, and all others, if ye love me, keep my commandments. Very straight to the point, no ambiguity there. It's just very simple. If you love me, keep my commandments. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 16. And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 17. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. So again, there's this differentiation, these lines of demarcation. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him, but ye know him, for he dwelleth in you and shall be in you. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 18. I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 19. Yet a little while, and the world seeth me no more. But ye see me, because I live. Ye shall live also. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 20. At that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and ye in me, and I in you. The Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 21. He that hath my commandments. Now this is what we closed on. Get this. He that hath my commandments, only them, and then keepeth them, only those people, he it is that loveth me. Those are the only people that really love him. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love you and will manifest myself to him. Interestingly enough, people talk about receiving the comfort of the Spirit of truth. But like Exodus chapter 19, verse 5, there is a requirement, a condition, a stipulation. A lot of people talk about receiving the Comforter, the Spirit of truth. But there's a requirement, a condition, a stipulation. The word keep, used in the Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 15, in the Greek means to observe, to give heed to Yahweh Elohim's commandments. To observe, to give heed to Yahweh Elohim's commandments. Something that we all must understand is that the commandments of Yahweh Elohim are different, the complete opposite from the secular world. The scripture shares with us in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. Let us read that. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 reads, Ye, Yeshua speaking to his disciples and those followers of him, ye are the light of the world. Only those. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. So those that follow his commandments, they're the light of the world. And if you are doing the things that he commands you, it's like a city being set on a hill. You can't hide. Everybody's going to see you. Scripture is sharing that those seeking him are the light of the world. They're that city on the hill. Scripture also shares in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 through 18. Let's read that. 2 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 14 reads, Be ye, okay, this is Paul talking here. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For, and he's telling you why. So he's telling you the what you shouldn't do, and then he's telling you why, the why. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? What do they have in common? Righteousness and unrighteousness. And what communion hath light and darkness? They can't exist at the same time. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 15 reads, And what concord, what union hath Christ and Belial, Hasatan and Yeshua? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel, that one that does not believe? 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16. And what agreement hath the temple of Elohiym with idols? For ye are the temple of the living Elohim. As Elohim hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them. He's not saying everybody. Again, there's some lines of demarcation. There's a differentiation here. Elohim had said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Not everybody. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17. Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith Yahweh the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18. And will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith Yahweh the Lord Almighty. Now allow us to meditate on this passage momentarily. Rhetorically, each one of us needs to be honest with ourselves. Each one of us needs to be honest with ourselves. As we seek Yahweh Elohim's best, would Yahweh Elohim be able to distinguish us? Have we come out and be separate? Have we truly separated and come out from among the world? Or do we still have similar traditions, holidays, and lifestyles of the secular world? We all need to be honest with ourselves. Studying and understanding Scripture reveals the benefits and advantages of seeking to adhere to Yahweh Elohim's best for us. Let us all be seeking for Yahweh Elohim's understanding, and that we be aware and obedient to the cues, the keys, and the warnings he shares with us. I would like to invite you to continue to fellowship and worship the Sabbath with the Ecclesia next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, please join the Ecclesia every Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for prayer. The link for both is provided on his servant's website. Something to think about. If you are seeking a blessing, be a blessing. If this message of something to think about has been a blessing, assist us with your time, your talents, and finances, and continue to grow and move from just knowing to truly understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. Peace and blessings.
His servant encourages you and prays that you will continue with him on the journey of growing and moving from just knowing to understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. To support you on your journey, his servant offers the following resources. His servant email address. Please feel free to reach out to his servant at any time with any questions, concerns, suggestions, and/or comments. His servant website and his servant YouTube channel. You are encouraged to subscribe to be alerted of new content. In addition, his servant recommends reading or listening to the beginning of Scriptural Truth, Volume 1. It affords a strong beginning foundation in not just knowing, but understanding the Scripture.